Welcome to another roundtable episode on Ladies Talking Love. In this episode, we are going to talk about Christmas traditions, about finding a balance between both yours and your partner's family traditions and how you can integrate those into your family traditions, and also about creating couple traditions. I feel like I don't have as many as I would like, even just to stay focused on connecting through the busy holiday season. I hope that this episode will just give you some good thoughts about how to stay connected, how to find joy in this season and make it yours for you and your partner and for your family. It's Ladies Talking Love, a community of women uncovering more joy and fulfillment in sex as we learn from experts and amazing women like you. Together, let's create a world where women's sexuality is celebrated and understood, beginning with our own. I'm your host, Ariel Finlinson. Let's talk love. I know this time of year can get so busy, so thank you for tuning in and learning with me. I just wanted to remind everyone that we'll be taking a break after this episode for the holidays, and we'll be coming back around the second week in January. So follow us on Instagram at ladies.talkinglove to know exactly when we'll be coming back on with our next episode. And I know we all have a lot going on in our lives, but if you have a chance over the holiday break, I would really appreciate if you could just hop on really quick and leave a review for the podcast. It helps other people find the podcast and know what it's about. And it would be a fantastic Christmas and birthday present. But without further ado, let's talk love. I'm so excited to welcome Becca and Kim onto Ladies Talking Love. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Hi, thank you.
So we are going to talk about Christmas and Christmas traditions and all things Christmas, but I'm first going to let Becca and Kim introduce themselves a little bit.
I'm Becca, and I live in Mapleton, Utah. I have 3 children, and I just live the mom life, but I love horses. I love being with my spouse, being outdoors, and that's a little bit about me.
I'm Kim. I live in Sacramento, California, and I also have 3 kids. Fun fact about me, I don't have favorites.
Favorite kids or favorite anything?
Anything. And I often will be found reading.
So to start off, one reason I asked Becky and Kim, so they are actually my friends from when we lived in California, and we all had girls about the same age, and they were my saving grace when I lived there. But from what I remember, Kim has some mixed feelings about Christmas and Becca loves Christmas. So I thought it would be super interesting to hear their perspectives.
It's true.
I think it's just, we need the balance, and other people are going to be like, I feel that way too. Yay. Someone else feels that way. So what are some things that you maybe like about Christmas, or what are some of the things that are hard for you about Christmas?
Things I love about Christmas is the gathering of families. I love to do activities that aren't done all year round. I love tradition. I love being able to concentrate more on the Savior and talking to my children about that in a different and special way. To me, makes Christmas a special season. I love Christmas lights. We just got Christmas lights on our house for the first time, and it just makes me happy when I drive up. So I love Christmas lights. And then things that I may dislike, I guess, about the Christmas season would be, I guess, the hustle and bustle of it. I feel like I'm going, and there's not time sometimes to focus on the things that I want to, or the things that I enjoy about the season. So it can be hard sometimes to slow down and refocus during those times.
Becca, that was a great answer. I feel like I'm going to say the same things. Yeah, I love the togetherness in Christmas and traditions. I come from a family that had a lot of traditions, and we clung to them. Not clung. We really enjoyed our traditions, and we still kind of participate in them, even though all of my siblings are grown and have left the house. And the true meaning of Christmas, obviously, I'm really just repeating what Becca said, but definitely, I think the thing that I struggle with Christmas, because it hasn't been my favorite in past years, things I think are changing as I lean into it a little more. But expectations, I feel like it's a season of expectations from myself, from others, from the schedule of things, and that I have a hard time with. And the busyness, I feel like it's so easy to be busy this time of year that I think most of us are so busy that it's hard to be intentional about this season. You get swept away really in it. And that for me, I have a hard time with. It just feels like fluff.
Can you tell us a little more about what some of the hard expectations have been over the years and how you've been able to lean into it to make it a little bit better for you and your family?
I think part of the expectation comes from myself of I should be doing this, I should be doing that. There's so many fun things to do, so many events happening all at the same time. And sometimes you just want to do all of them, or you feel like you should do all of them because this is why we're celebrating the season, or my family did this growing up and I felt so attached to it, and all those things. And it gets exhausting for me. So now that I have my own family, and I realized I struggled with Christmas and I didn't want it to be that way. And so over the years, if I intentionally picked things that have brought joy to me and what reflects my own feelings of the season, it has become more meaningful to me.
That's so good. I think expectations is a huge thing that has been really hard for me. But also, I'm also like coming from the side of I've always loved Christmas and everything about Christmas. And I was born right near Christmas time. So it was just like my birthday and Christmas. And I was all about everything and the snow. That's actually probably one of the main things I don't like about Christmas right now is the past couple of years, I haven't had any snow and I just want like a huge dump of snow. But the expectations can be so hard to figure out, especially as we're combining two families that have all of these traditions.
Yes.
And I know I was so attached to like all of my traditions when I came in. I was like, no, we have to do all of mine, which is a horrible way to be.
It's so funny though. We do attach ourselves to traditions. I think they serve a purpose to, like I said, bringing people together and feeling that attachment to each other and to the meaning of what you're doing. So it's a step away from it.
And I feel like it helps to bond your family. So what have you guys done to kind of pick and choose, especially with what you were talking about, Kim and Becca, about the hustle and bustle? Like you can't have all the traditions. If your families are coming in with full Christmas traditions, you can't have all of them. What have you done to kind of pick what your family's going to do?
I think what my husband and I have focused on is picking a few traditions from our families that were our favorite and narrowing them down to a couple that we want to bring into our family and then creating new ones. And the new ones, we try and put the more of the focus on and what works for our family and even like the stage of life. Because most of the memories I have from traditions with my family, I'm a little bit older and I remember them in different ways. And my kids are still really young and may not react the same to maybe some of the traditions that my parents did. And so I think just focusing more on the stage of life you're in and what your kids are going to enjoy the most at this stage or time in their life has helped me kind of slow down and be like, okay, refocus and pick a few things that they're going to enjoy. And again, like Kim said, there's so much going on, so many events. I've written down a list of probably 100 things that are going on during December already, and I haven't done one of them. So I think it's just trying to refocus on the things that matter and the things that are going to give your kids experience, but it doesn't have to be the 100 list. It can be 5 things and they're still going to enjoy themselves.
So what are some of the traditions that, if you're okay to share, that you guys have picked to keep from both sides? And what are some of the ones you've created just for your family?
So what my family did that I love is we lived on a 3-story house. And so some kids slept downstairs, some lived on the top, and then our Christmas tree and Christmas presents were on the middle level. So Christmas morning, the older kids, which were the brothers usually, had to come past that room downstairs to wake up my parents and the girls. So my parents would wake up, and if they thought that my brothers had peeked in the room, they were last to go in the room. And usually every year they were assumed to have peeked. And so we would line up on the stairs and my dad would talk to us for a minute, and then he'd let usually the youngest one in, and she'd run in and start screaming and we'd all have to wait. And then, so one by one, my dad would let us in. So I've kept that tradition, but I kind of let all my kids go in at the same time instead of one by one.
That would be hard to have to wait to hear the joy.
Yeah, it is hard. Something that both of our families did was having piles for each kid. Our family never had wrapped gifts for Santa. They were always unwrapped, but Steve's are always wrapped in a Santa Claus face wrapping paper. So we compromise that and do both. There's a couple that are wrapped, a couple that aren't.
Kyle and I have had that problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think like with that, we talked about it and it means so much to him. It means so much to me. So we just, a couple are wrapped, a couple aren't. There you go.
Perfect.
So those are the ones that really stick out to me on two traditions that we liked the most.
What about you, Kim? Especially because your dad is like Father Christmas, you said. So it sounds like Christmas was super special. And maybe that's where some of the expectations came from. It was like, I can never live up to.
Yeah. Well, I love what you've done with your spouse, that you actually came together and you're like, this is what's important to me. This is important. Because sometimes what we were saying before, it's hard to break it all up. You want to do all of your traditions, but you picked those that were most meaningful and then creating a whole new environment for your family growing up. Because I think oftentimes I get tangled up with, well, I had this experience growing up as a kid. I wanted to give it to my kids. I feel most of us feel that way in anything, not just Christmas traditions. And I just recently, I was thinking about this. I think my kids can have a great childhood and not have it be mine. So I can let go of some things, that I was doing as a child.
That is profound.
And it's going to be meaningful to them, So I just have to say, I love that. So for me and my family, my husband, he doesn't have very many traditions in his family. It's mainly just my family that had a bazillion traditions and some quite odd to him. But, traditions sometimes can be that way. So it wasn't too hard to pick and choose what we'd carry. To be honest, a lot of it, because I knew that it was a lot. And I think growing up, I loved my Christmases, but sometimes I felt that there was something I wanted to be connected to more. I think I'm a people person. I love feeling that togetherness, that bond. And sometimes I miss that in the bustle of 6 kids in the house with parents and sometimes pets. And it was crazy. So that I try and bring to my family of how can we feel most connected. So we've carried some things over with my family, but a lot of it, we've kind of been paving our own way of what works for us, because some of the traditions, we have less kids. They're also different ages from what I remember, kind of like what you were saying. So we're trying to make it work for what stage it is right now for us.
Can you give us some examples?
Something that was new to our family. I got it from, I think a lot of people have done this, but I got it from an influencer, had mentioned doing a series of an advent calendar of togetherness within the family. And that was something that I attached to because that's my intention. That's my mantra. And in the Christmas season is togetherness. And so that is something that we've started. And my girls actually remember, they will bring it up. And that makes me feel like, oh, this is a good tradition. This is something that they look forward to, something small that we can do together. So that's something that's new, something that we've carried over. I have my girls give each other gifts. We did siblings gifts, and they're young at this stage. And so it's not the same, but it can be similar. In my family growing up, it was like we picked names and it was secret and we thought about it. And it was hyped, and then Christmas Eve, we'd open it up. It was such a big deal, which it was so fun. But right now my kids are pretty young, but my youngest is 7 months. So I don't think she's going to be talking about like if she's getting her sisters. So right now it's just the two of them, but that's something that I really liked with us growing up that we've now continued to do.
As you guys have been talking, I was just thinking how I came from a family who had a ton of traditions, and a lot of our traditions were just based with my immediate family because we didn't live by any extended family. And so coming in, I had all these traditions I was super attached to, but as the longer we've been married, I was just realizing so many of those traditions I just don't really care about anymore, which is okay and fine. And we've kind of created some of our own. And I've really let go of a lot of them, which is just interesting because growing up, I was like, how am I ever going to let go of any of these? Because they meant so much, but simplifying and trying to make it more about togetherness. I also do Ralphie Jacobs, her Simply on Purpose togetherness. And my kids remember it. Like I got a special little train advent calendar where I could put the papers in, and we didn't do ours today though. So we'll do it tomorrow. But they were like so excited when we put the train out. And they're like, oh, when do we get to do the train? Like, when do we get to start? And I think those are so fun to find those things that are meaningful to your kids. And some of them may change. Like as our kids age, we may find that something's more meaningful or we're going to change. But that's been good to, just figure out what we want for the experiences for Christmas for our kids. And when you were talking about expectations as well, Kim, it made me think about gift expectations. So, which is one of my big things that was really hard about Christmas. I think I mentioned before, but when I first married Kyle, he was not very good at giving gifts to me. And recently, I finally realized that one of the problems was it actually probably wasn't that Kyle was a bad gift giver. It was that my love language from what I want from my spouse is gifts. And I had always kind of labeled the love language of gifts as so dumb because it was like, why do you just want things? And so I was like, that's such a dumb love language. And then I was listening to this podcast episode about love languages. And I realized I was like in the car starting to cry. I was like, my love language is gifts. And it's actually gifts and I should embrace it. Kyle had already realized that before I even was able to tell him, because it's not even about the gift for me. It's about that he thought about me. So like for my 30th birthday, which is by Christmas, so it kind of lumps in, but he like took every 10 years of my life and found a charm that he thought represented what those 10 years of my life were like. And he like put him on a necklace and he went to all these jewelers to find him. And the jewelers looked at him like, what are you doing? Like, this is, and he's like, it doesn't matter what it looks like. I just need it on the necklace. And like, he got it. Like, I didn't really care what the necklace looked like. It was just so special because he thought about me and he took that time. And so that's been a really good change in our relationship as I've been able to voice that, but also he kind of figured it out before I realized myself that that was my love language from him, not necessarily other people, but from my spouse. That's my love language. And so what have you guys done? Like, how do you communicate with your husbands about gifts? Like, do you like surprises? Do you tell them what you want? How have you figured that out?
Oh man. So Steve is a big Christmas person, gift giving person. And I have a really hard time making lists of what I want because the majority of things I want are maybe things I need. And he doesn't agree that things I need are gifts. So, so like you said, I think the most special gifts to me are the ones that I can tell he's thought about, maybe not just on my list. So I would say I do enjoy a surprise gift more probably because it's something he's sat down and said, okay, this isn't on our list, but I'm going to think about something special to give her that's going to mean something. So I think he knows that by now that most of the stuff on my list aren't going to be a meaningful item per se, that he has to kind of come up with that on his own. And I think it goes both ways. I mean, the stuff he puts on his list is just stuff, and we both kind of have to come up with something that we feel is going to be special to each other.
I feel like when they pick out a gift that isn't on your list, it's like they see you. You know, you feel seen and, like you said, loved.
Yeah, it's so true. And for me too, like with gifts, one thing I would tell Kyle too is like, I don't even want a thing per se. I want you to think about me and like plan an experience or do something. Like I just want to be thought of and to be together. Like that's what I really want.
So for us, it's kind of changed over the years, depending. But I think most often I prefer a surprise gift. And I also prefer a surprise gift to give to Maxwell because that's my favorite part. But we have, depending on the year, we've talked about like, this is what I'd like, or this is what would be useful. But I always try and slip out something. It's like a challenge. If I can get something off his list that would be life-changing for him, I've won Christmas.
That's awesome. How do you think of that? Just notice what they might need.
I mean, you're going to laugh, but I usually have a running list of gifts for him, probably starting around August time. Like, I could put that on the Christmas list. So
I'm really bad at that. Steve's really good at that. He starts in like January.
time for Christmas again.
He's ready.
He's like, you've been asking for this and this and this all year long. I'm like, what? How do you remember that?
You're like, you got to be careful what you say.
I wanted those shoes. Oh, okay.
I do have to say, though, I don't know if this fits in with your answer, but we've had quite a lot of mishaps over the years. I have this running joke with Maxwell that he always ruins Christmas because he's somehow come across these gifts that I'm secretly getting him and finds it unintentionally before he even opens it. And so it's kind of a funny thing, which it's already happened this year, ladies. It's
mine too. Kyle saw both of my gifts.
Well, good thing I haven't got Steve's yet.
Well, one of them came in the mail without like being in a box that was unmarked. So that was very unhelpful. And then the other one he just guessed. So there you have it. That's my Christmas. I feel like something that has been hard for me too is marrying in and having Christmas like with each other's families. We've started now to kind of sometimes do it with just our family now that our kids are getting a little bit older. But what have your guys' experiences been? How do you kind of stay connected as a family and a couple when you're with each other's families?
I think that's something that I actually struggle with a lot, especially when we would visit his family for Christmas. In the first few years of marriage before having kids, I just felt very cut off and closed. And it was my first Christmas away from my family. And so I was feeling all sorts of emotions. And so I think for me, staying connected during the holidays, it's very important for us to have like at least one day a week where we go on a date. And it can have something to do with Christmas. It can not have something to do with Christmas, but something that gives us that time to reconnect with each other. Maybe not on a deep level, but just gives us time to just get away from other people, even if it's family. But yeah, I think I always felt kind of awkward in the first few years, even like but around both families, but more so his, where I was like, I don't want to, cuddle too much on the couch or be too lovey-dovey, but that sense has gone away a little bit. I think bringing kids into the world makes, you feel like, you know what, I've done it all. They know I've done it all. And here we are. So,
that was great.
I think for us, what has helped feel connected as a family and feel like our own separate unit is taking that time away. Oftentimes when we visit family, we'll try and do something small before we go. We're usually traveling. So to travel to go see family and be there for Christmas, even if it's just like opening gifts before or celebrating in some way, the way we want to before, I think that has helped. And taking the time out, kind of like what Becca said, to step away. Like, I'm going to go on a walk just with my spouse, even though it's Christmas Eve, those kinds of things I feel like can help and has helped us connect.
Those are such great ideas. I know for me, I think one of the struggles kind of being with families was that me or Kyle would kind of fall back into our role in the family versus staying like a separate entity as our own family. And not that we can't be integrated, but it was almost like, oh, you forgot that you're married and have kids. Like, hold on a second. Like, I'm your wife and these are your kids and I need you to help. You can't just be the older sibling here. But just like, it's tricky because that dynamic of a family can be so strong. And so I think it was just really important for us as we started, like just the longer we went in our marriage, being able to talk like, hey, this happened last time. And I felt frustrated, or I felt like I wasn't seeing what can we do to kind of keep our unit as a family while we're with your family. Cause we still need support from each other. If I'm with my family and I'm falling into that role, or you're with yours. And that was a really important thing to talk about. That for the first while, I feel like I didn't talk to him about some of those things. And I just like swallowed it and was like really frustrated, but talking about it has really helped us to figure that dynamic out. What are some of the traditions that you do during the holiday season with your family?
One that I thought of that I always loved doing with my family, but I haven't necessarily brought it over yet because of the stage of life I'm in, is we would have our Christmas Eve dinner with our whole family, and then Christmas Day was just us. But then towards the middle of the day, we would go and visit extended family. And it was usually always the older people. It was my grandma's siblings that we would all go visit. And I just have such fond memories of going to each of their houses. Sorry, I'm like getting teary. They've all passed away, but going there as a young child, and there's something special about old people. And so being in a huge family and being younger and visiting older people, it gave me a sense of gratitude for the things I was able to do and the things that brought them joy, that I kind of stood back and watched as I would see them interact with other family members or look at their decorations and the different nativities they had, or their famous cooking that I, vividly remember, these funeral potatoes that my great aunt made. So I think that was something special because it was the only time I saw them. We didn't visit them very often, but it was always special to me that I went and that my parents made an effort to visit family members that we didn't see all the time. And that I think the majority of people don't have a relationship with their great aunt or their great uncle. So being able to go to a more extended family for me was something special. Like you had said previously, it's harder when they're not as close. When I grew up, everybody lived close. And so it's not something that I think I'm able to do yet, but that's something that was special to me growing up.
That's awesome, Becca. Thanks. I never had any experiences like that because I wasn't close. That's really cool to hear. There's definitely parts of me that I wish I had experienced more of that because I haven't. It can be hard for me to integrate Kyle's traditions like that because I just never had it. And so it wasn't normal for me. I loved hearing that. Did you have any other family traditions you thought of, Kim?
With my little family, I feel like we're at the stage that we're developing traditions. A couple years ago, expectations. I was too hard on myself. I'm thinking, my kids aren't going to remember Christmas as a meaningful time. We do nothing. And I was kind of stressing about it in a way in that time when I was like a Scrooge about Christmas. And I've realized that it's that developing stage that they're so kind of like the Advent calendar of togetherness that we do. They're starting to remember it. There's little things that we've done, like we would go build a snowman at the beach. That was a really fun thing to do. And sometimes there's been some years where I try things and it doesn't stick. And I just think that's okay. That was fun in the time, but there's probably going to be another tradition that sticks. Because I know for me growing up, there's actually one in particular tradition that's a really big deal. And it's kind of silly. My dad used to give a fuss every time we'd wake up. We'd wake up really early in the morning and go run to their room. I feel like most kids do that. And my dad would be like, oh, wait, I need to get in the shower. I need to brush my hair before. And we're like, no, don't do that. So over the years, it's developed in this huge thing where my siblings and I would have official Christmas plan meetings and make a plan to wake up my dad, essentially. And he's already awake. And they were very extravagant. It was almost like a full production that we put on every morning to do these things. And I realized it was kind of inspired by my grandfather, but no one in my extended family has done these Christmas plans. It was something that my siblings and I developed, and it is a big part of our Christmas celebration. In fact, maybe this is embarrassing, I'll regret later, but even as adults, we still make Christmas plans and wake up my parents if we're visiting. I don't know if we'll do it this year, but we do that. But I realize that's a memory that I have as an older child, and my family just isn't functioning like that yet. That's not something that we do, and that's not a bad thing. That was an example of a developing tradition from my family. And so I think about that in my family now, of like, we'll have those things. And I think things are becoming traditions and I don't even notice them. And so just to embrace the season that I'm in right now with my kids and leaning into those opportunities of celebrating that togetherness with them. And they're going to remember things that are going to be so meaningful, just like Becca was sharing, that is going to be impactful. And I did not orchestrate that. That's something outside of me, which I think is a beautiful thing.
That's such a great reminder because I think we do. I have felt that just so much pressure of like, I have to make this special. And it's like, my first child is 2 months old. Like, she's
Yeah,
not going to know
well,
anything, but I was trying to like do everything that I thought I should to make it special. But just that a lot of these evolve. And there's actually the same Simply on Purpose, Ralphie Jacobs, she had a little Christmas paper that you could print out, and it was asking your kids what is most meaningful to you about Christmas, and you could have them like draw a picture or write, and that was really helpful. My kids are still young enough that there wasn't much that they remembered. They were like presents, Christmas tree, but I feel like that's a helpful thing to see what traditions are meaningful to them and which ones you want to keep, and that they evolve, and they will evolve as your family grows. And this is such a busy time of year. We were talking about it just can get so busy and it can be filled with so many things. And so I think it's good to think about intentionally what you want as a family, but especially as a couple. I feel like I haven't done a great job of being as intentional as I would like to be to stay connected during such a busy season. Do you guys have any things that you do as a couple to stay connected during the holiday season?
I think that's probably one of our biggest downfalls. I don't feel like we focus a lot on each other during Christmas. It's definitely our kids, our family. Like I've said, Steve is all about Christmas, all about the presents. And so that's kind of what we focus on. But one thing that I love that is a tradition of mine, I guess not a tradition, but something we always do, is wrapping Christmas Eve. We love to do that. So we'll put on a Christmas movie and we'll just wrap for hours and talk, and he'll probably make hot chocolate in the Cocoa Motion, that type of stuff.
Oh, I love it.
That's probably the only thing that I feel like we do as a couple during the holiday season. For the most part, I feel like it's our whole family that tries to do activities.
I feel like those little things, though, it seems so insignificant, but they are significant in bringing you together.
I agree. What about you, Kim?
So there's this one thing that we kind of done. It was inspired by when we were dating. Like I said, my husband doesn't have a lot of traditions with his family. And I think might have even been before we were engaged, but he had come days before and spent some time with my family for Christmas. And he had wrapped a gift, and insignificant gift, sweatpants, not a big deal. But in the pocket,
that's a great gift.
It was a good one. It wasn't a hit on him in it by any means. The whole point was in the sweatpants, he had slipped a letter written to me. And I can't remember exactly what was in the letter, but I remembered it was very impactful to me. And I'm sure I still have that letter. But since then, every Christmas, I don't do it every year because sometimes it escapes me, but I try and write him a letter and I'll stick it in his stocking. And because I feel like I don't want to miss an opportunity to tell him how much I love him. And this sounds totally cheesy, but I am grateful to have that guy in my life. And so I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss those times telling him that, because especially when it gets crazy, like I have 3 kids and I'm surviving right now, but I just like taking those opportunities, especially when we're celebrating Christmas. So I try and do that. This is a reminder to me, I'm going to do it this year. I think last year I missed it, but
it's recorded.
So that's something that's, I guess, kind of a tradition that we do.
You made me cry, Kim. That was so good.
No. I guess another thing is it's not a tradition, but another thing is I just get really excited to give him gifts. Maybe my love language is gifts too. I don't know. And I'm thinking about it, Ariel. Maybe I should ask Maxwell. But I just, like I said, I try and find something that's like off his list. And like, if it's something that hits home, it's the best feeling ever. And so I just get excited about gifting him something just as much as I'm gifting my other kids. And it's a challenge every year to make sure he doesn't accidentally ruin Christmas.
The thing that helped me figure out my love language was gifts was, first of all, I love giving gifts. Like I love to kind of figure out what people might like, what might be special to them, which also can be a hard balance because it's like, if they don't like it, I want them to be able to say that and I should be okay with that. But also I just love trying to figure out like what would be helpful or what would be meaningful. And then looking back on my life, I was able to pinpoint that certain hurts that had happened were from gifts that weren't meaningful.
Interesting.
And I was like, guess my love language is gifts. And I had to admit it to Kyle. It was a good realization, but definitely hard. But one thing that we wrap presents together, which I like. And like I said, I love giving gifts. So I'll like make my little spreadsheet and I like talking about what we're going to get and figuring that out. But something that we usually try to do. So we fell in love around Christmas time. And so we usually at some point around the time we had like our first kiss or had a special date, we try to do a little bit of a reenactment with what we can. When we haven't lived in the same place, we would just like watch the Grinch that we had watched that night. And now that we live here, last year, my husband had broken his leg, so we couldn't get out and walk, but we went and like drove by the place we had our first kiss. So that's just been a fun thing to kind of remember and try to relive a little bit of it during the Christmas season. But we don't have a ton of couple traditions. I want to think of some more.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel the same way. I'd like to make more traditions.
So I reached out to the Instagram community just to see what some of them said about some of their couple traditions. And we have some good ones. So I'll share what they said. So one of them said, ice cream dates on the couch. We sit, eat our treat, and talk. One girl, her husband made a list of all the things they want to do together, and the goal is to cross it all off.
That is cool.
Which is kind of fun. Another one was a great reminder. Don't ignore the need to continue with scheduled dates.
Yes.
Becca mentioned that, which I think is so important. Keep having dates. Another idea, she said that new lingerie to open on Christmas Eve. Watch cheesy Christmas movies and wrap presents together.
Yeah.
We do something spicy in each other's stockings. I tried to get Kyle something spicy last year. I got him a massage candle and I specifically addressed it to myself so I would remember. And when it came in the mail, it was addressed to me. And so I was like, what is this? Who sent this to me? Kyle, open this because it's probably to me. So he like opens it and I realize I like grab it from him and I'm like, don't look. But so that was my experience last year trying to do a surprise. But the massage candle has been great. Nice. It's been a fun addition. And this one might be one of my favorites. She said she helps Santa on Christmas Eve in lingerie.
Yes.
Sounding really good.
They're awesome. Thank you both so much for sharing some of your ideas and thoughts about Christmas because it's such a special time and can be so meaningful. But I know I get caught in the hustle and bustle sometimes. Do you have any last thoughts you're thinking of?
I think my last thought is just something that I need to work on quite a bit, but I think Christmas is so much about giving. It's just giving. And if you're doing that, then, you're going to find joy in the season, no matter the hustle, the bustle, but whether you're giving gifts to your spouse, your children, or I love the new giving machines and allowing your children to be able to pick something special to give to someone that they don't even know, but something that will instill in them a tradition that is going to be meaningful and put them outside of themselves of just getting the gifts. I hope to integrate that more into my family.
Oh man, that's so good.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. That's such a good reminder because it is such a great time of year to give and to help our kids see that too.
Well, I think we mentioned those expectations, and when we're thinking outside of ourselves, we're not worrying about those expectations, right? We're not focusing on ourselves so much where some of those expectations can come from. So thank you, Becca, for sharing. That was awesome.
Such a good reminder. Thank you both so much. This is so fun to chat.
Yeah,
thank you.
I hope this episode gave you some good things to talk about with your spouse, that you can figure out Christmas traditions for you as a family or for you as a couple. I know that's something I mentioned. I want to do more couple traditions, and even just something that hit home this year, like Becca and one of the ladies from our community mentioned, is making sure that your regular dates happen. And that's been good for us, even with Christmas time, that we still take time to just be together and plan something fun. Even if it is Christmas or not Christmassy, it's just great to be together and connect. Another thing that I've been thinking about with my realization this past year about my love language is just how important it's been for me and Kyle to talk about how we like to receive gifts. That talking about my love language is gifts, but I don't necessarily need something big or expensive or even a thing. I just want to know that I was thought about. But I also like surprises. And I know that Kyle loves surprises. So I love to just try to think of surprises for him. But that's been really helpful as we've gone farther into our marriage to be able to realize those things. And it helps make the gifts more meaningful, which for a long time, I felt like if I told him what I wanted, specific items, or if I told him what type of gifts I enjoyed, that it wouldn't be as special. And I felt that way with sex as well. It's like, well, if I have to tell him, it's not as special. But I found the opposite to be true, that he's then able to show me love in the way that I appreciate and I can relate to and I want. And that can be so meaningful, even if it's like, wow, you got the boots that I told you I wanted. Awesome. I'm so excited. And that's been a really good thing for us. I hope that you all have a great Christmas. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope that you're able to take time to connect with your partner and just enjoy your time with family or friends as you celebrate. I'll also link Ralphie Jacobs' gifts of togetherness in the show notes since we talked about them several times. And the awesome podcast episode I listened to from the 3 and 30 podcast called How to Accept When Your Spouse Doesn't Speak Your Love Language. It is definitely worth a listen. Thanks so much for joining me and talking love. Thank you to all of you who listen and join me on this journey, and to our Ladies Talking Love team who make the podcast possible. Thanks to our sound wizard, Kimberly Demers, our newsletter guru, Lauren Barton, and our miscellaneous task whiz, Jana Norman. As always, thanks for talking love.